All right, so we've discussed some general takeaways from last night, but what about individual performances? The Progressive Change Campaign Committee gave strong praise to Senator Elizabeth Warren, with their co-founder Adam Green saying last night, Elizabeth Warren's political instincts were proven tonight. She successfully sidelined the false attacks in recent weeks and was able to pivot back to her core message of fighting systemic corruption, challenging power, and helping the daily lives of Democratic, Independent, and Republican families.
Adam Green himself is here to talk about Elizabeth Warren's performance, how issues like Medicare for All were discussed, and more. Adam, it's great to see you.
I always love having you, Adam. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's always fun to have you on right after the debate. I mean, overall, how are you feeling about Elizabeth Warren's performance last night?
Well, first, I think the real winner last night was Tom Steyer. Let's just be clear.
Well, his Christmas tie is almost seasonal
he does
now,
have the
so
same tie.
he's getting there.
Right. Yeah. Hey, look, the way I judge these debates is not did one's own supporters feel good about the performance.
Sure.
I think many supporters did.
Right.
Yeah.
The question is, what did it do to the trajectory of the debate?
Yes.
Right. And some people need a trajectory change, or some people don't. For Warren, I mean, she's been taking incoming fire for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Right. She's been under siege on Medicare for All for the last 2 months. The thing that fueled her rise was her core message of fighting systemic corruption, fighting for everyday people, challenging corporations and powerful interests. And she was able to get that across on TV last night. You know, the wealth tax, one of her signature issues that our polling finds is 80-20, 90-10 popular.
Yeah.
She was able to really engage on that. So I think for her, boring was good. Even if the pundits were bored, this is actually what's worked with voters and got her point by point by point in the past, and I'm glad she's
It was
back
a
on that
bizarre
territory.
attack line from Cory Booker. Yeah, just talk about that, because what did he say? He was talking about entrepreneurship and all this, and he was saying, yeah, we're going to have that, and that's why we don't need a wealth tax. I was like,
It was
what?
when I talk to people, they say they want to grow wealth. I'm like, no one has ever said that to you.
I'm like,
it was such
it's one of those things that's like, I don't believe you. It's like, I don't believe this.
It was such donor-approved language.
Right. It's kind of like the SNL cold open a couple weeks ago where someone's like, I'm an aspiring billionaire and stay-at-home dad.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right? But honestly, I kind of thought that was an accident of sequencing. Like he happened to be in the middle of the debate and he happened to just engage on it because why not? But it didn't seem like he went on the debate stage intending to attack the wealth tax.
He was not prepared to go after her on wealth tax at all.
Yeah.
If you recall, the circus folks, Barnum and Bailey Circus.
Yeah.
P.T. Barnum used to say, if you want to attract a crowd, pick a fight.
Yeah.
And I think it was very good for Elizabeth Warren that by accident he picked a fight on the wealth tax because she got round after round after round.
I agree with you.
Oh, you want to say more? Let me tell you what it'll pay for. Universal child care.
Yeah, right.
Retiring student debt. It's like, good. That was helpful for her.
Yeah, it really
and got her
was.
back onto her core ground.
Yeah, I think that's right. And like you say, it's despite what Nancy Pelosi might think or say, wealth tax is very popular, not just with Democrats, and certainly not just in liberal cities like San Francisco that happen to also be very wealthy. Were you surprised? Because we were surprised that Warren's transition plan didn't face any scrutiny, that she didn't get a question directly on that. Were you surprised by that? I'm sure she was prepared for it.
Yeah, I mean, she got one, I think maybe she proactively inserted one explanation of it in there.
Yeah.
Being like, I want to do
But she didn't actually get a question on it. She kind of addressed it herself. Yeah,
that was interesting. I would have expected more, but I think that's
same. I mean, for Bernie and Pete not to talk about that, I mean, I think it was really bizarre, Adam. But another thing I do want to talk to you about. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing about that.
Yeah.
So again, I look at the trajectory of the race, right, and what's the net impact. So one thing I've heard over the last month or two are scared electability voters who are saying, oh, she's getting attacked. I want a progressive who's electable. I thought she was the progressive who's electable, but I'm scared of attacks. And I think quiet was good for her last night, right? Like everybody had the opportunity to throw a punch. They didn't. She looked good. I feel like maybe some people are at ease, and I would not be surprised if she got a couple points in the polls because of that.
Are you? I think your point about the trajectory is well taken. I mean, we've been saying here, look, I think Biden does very poorly in all these debates, but he didn't have any particular meltdown moment, and the status quo is good for him. I mean, the national polls still have him up at the top. So I think your point about the trajectory is well taken. Are you concerned, though, about the rise of Pete? I mean, new Iowa polls and the Iowa average has him in the lead now. This New Hampshire poll I don't really buy, but he seems to be increasing his support among affluent white liberals. Is that something that you're concerned about cutting into Warren's base?
In a sense, I mean, again, I think he's really tapped into the electability voter. I think his core argument wasn't about policy. It was, hey, I'm electable. Look at her, she's not.
Which is bizarre because that's not what the polls say at all.
It's not what the polls say at all. Yeah. That's been his core argument, and I've seen it just talking to people. Like, oh, I'm nervous about Warren, maybe Pete. So I'm looking at the trajectory. Like, I think, he's had a noticeable uptick in Iowa. I'm really curious to see if he plateaus, if he starts going down after this debate. I'm really watching New Hampshire because there's such a lag. I mean, honestly, when I look at Biden, I'm not sure status quo is great for him. I mean, status quo has seen him go from first place to like third or fourth in Iowa, first place to third or fourth in New Hampshire, and the rest of the country kind of catches up. So I'm really looking at New Hampshire with Pete to see if basically he had a short-term blip in Iowa, or whether he continues to be on the rise.
Well, he's spending a lot of money in Iowa.
Part of the issue is that, he did not take any real fire last night, Adam. I mean, Warren didn't take the opportunity to kind of take it to him and really show that main contrast. And he's dug into her support in Iowa more than anybody. Do you think that was a mistake, not just on her part, but on all the candidates' parts, for not going after this guy, who came out of nowhere to try and take the top spot in Iowa?
Possibly. It would have been nice if the moderators, gave him the level of scrutiny that they've applied to other frontrunners.
Yeah, they gave nothing. Right? It was
I said this earlier, but I just have to say, can you imagine if Bernie or Warren or Joe put out Plan for Black America and faked endorsements on it and said these were African Americans and they were really white people? It would be media circus, 0 questions on it. That's insane.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's insane.
There also was a recent article in his home paper, the Indianapolis Star-Tribune, something like that. Where it basically said, here's the cost of all his proposals, $4 trillion. He has not said how he's going to pay for that. Like Warren laid out how she will pay for $20.5 trillion. He has not gotten to 4. And there's some straight shot policy questions he could have been asked.
Obvious things glaring that he has not been pressed on. Let me ask you the question that Warren didn't get on Medicare for All transition. So the idea is that she'll first pass a sort of public option plan, lower the age on Medicare, expand access immediately, but then the full Medicare for All will be a separate legislation passed 3 years. The criticism that I've leveled and others, I'm not unique on this, is that this will be after a midterm election. Party in power often loses power. It's going to be so hard. You were deeply engaged in the public option fight last time around. I was there with you. We know how hard it is to get these things through. The thought that you're going to be able to do that not once but twice, it seems a little fanciful.
Yeah. So you know how in politics, it's nice to get someone off the sidelines to vote for you, but if you can take one of the other person's votes and put it in your column, it's a net pickup of 2. I think what she's trying to do is take a political constituency of tens of millions of people who wouldn't be in Medicare and could be susceptible to scare tactics and move them into the Medicare system within her first 100 days, right, through a combination of executive action and passing a public option. And then engage, that represents the fight. That will always be a fight. She's not delaying the fight. That is part of the fight. But then when you're in the final vote of the fight, you have 50 million new people on your side being like, oh, I love this system, right? One thing I would also point out is that the current Senate bill is a 4-year transition from the point of passage, meaning if it's not easy to pass right away and you fight, and then let's say Bernie was president and he asked for a mandate in the midterms and everything went right and we kept a majority and we passed it in his 3rd year, it would actually phase in 7 years later. What she's saying is the clock starts ticking on day 1. I'm starting the transition. I'm starting the public option. I will have it passed by my 3rd year and fully implemented by my 4th year. So some could argue that we will actually get to Medicare for All faster, both through feasibility and through that timeline.
So I understand all of that technically, but when part of the pay for is an immigration reform, part of the pay for is as well. It's not just the executive action. There has to be the wealth tax passage. There has to be immigration reform passage. All of these are not going to be bundled together, Adam. So to say that would actually happen in the 3rd year, that just looks fanciful. Really, I think that's the best word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the good news. So we just released some poll numbers at the Progressive Change Institute with our partners Public Citizen and Business for Medicare for All, led by Wendell Potter, a former VP at Cigna Insurance, who then became a whistleblower. And it basically showed the public does not care about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
The public cares about how this will impact their lives. They care about staying out of medical bankruptcy.
Sure.
They care about
they want to pay less. That's it.
Well, they want to pay less, but they don't want to die or go into bankruptcy. They don't want their parents to suffer without having long-term care. And last night, I think both Bernie and Warren emphasized the core elements: no copays, no deductibles, no premiums, no out-of-pocket costs. That's what we need to be talking about. So part of what I liked about last night, even if it was a fault of the moderators for not going there, was they didn't bring us into the weeds. They allowed our 2 Medicare for All champions to actually stay focused on the big picture, which our polling shows is exactly where they need to be.
I do want to ask you about that polling. What did you find were the most effective arguments for and against Medicare for All?
Yeah, so in addition to the core argument of no copays, no deductibles, no premiums, the things that really stood out, we tested a whole battery of positive arguments because there's so much good stuff in there.
Yeah.
And again, the idea that people are dying and people are going medically bankrupt because of these huge bills was by far the most persuasive thing. It's such a human point.
It's really heartening, actually. Because it may not be you, but the fact that you care about that other people are going through that, it actually is very heartwarming.
Right. But part of it is it could be you. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Many people who are satisfied with their own insurance haven't had a crisis recently.
Right.
But they might, their parent or grandparent or themselves will eventually need long-term care. And Pramila's bill is actually the strongest on long-term care right now. The third argument that actually did quite well was the idea that the rest of the world has it, why don't we?
Yeah.
It's not saying we want to be Denmark, but it's saying, look, from a feasibility perspective, everyone else did it. Why are we the last of them?
Why do we think this is so impossible?
So what was the most effective, just last quickly here, what was the most effective tactic against it?
Tactic against it?
Yeah.
Well, I think, the taxes will go up and the people will lose insurance remain, at least the most high profile attacks. But what we found was if you don't pull a Rahm Emanuel, if you don't go on TV and repeat their talking points for them, and if you give either the Bernie answer or the Warren answer or a couple other answers, all of them do fine. Basically, there's a dip if it's attacked, and it goes back up as long as we make some case.
Got it.
And what were the top line numbers in terms of support?
Basically, based on what people know now, it was 66 to 34, 66% of the people. Once attacks came, there was a little dip, and once rebuttals came, there was a little bit of an increase, but it always maintained a positive number. Independent women love Medicare for All, African Americans, Latinx voters, even independent voters in general.
That was one of, to me, the interesting takeaways was voters of color strongly support. So if you want to win voters of color, if you want people to come out and support you, Medicare for All is a great policy.
That's why it's weird when Joe Biden said last night that Democratic voters don't like Medicare for All. That's just provably not true.
False.
That is
completely false.
All right, Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to see you.
Appreciate it, man.
We'll have more Rising after this.